Nole Nation, welcome into episode 3 of the Renegade Rundown, and we've got a special guest with us today. This guy right here, Kelvin Hunt, he's got a giant platform, a giant brand with chopchat.com. He's got tons of content out there. He's got a couple guys writing for him. Go check that out again. That's chopchat.com. And he's also on here promoting his podcast he's just launched and really getting into. Built for Playmakers podcast right here on YouTube. And thanks for joining us, Kelvin. It's a pleasure having you.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here. Look forward to it. Should be a good time.
Absolutely, man. I like to start off with recruiting most of the time. We got prep football kicking off, man. We've seen some commits out there. Cam Davis just trucking dudes. KJ Bolden for Buford just killing it in his, I believe it was a jamboree. That's what we had last week, was all the week 0 games, grabbing a pick 6. I believe he caught a touchdown or 2. But the biggest one, I think the most highlights is probably going to be that Chaminade Madonna game. And boy, it's unreal. You know, we're targeting both these guys they have outside, but those bookend wide receivers and Jeremiah Smith and Josiah Trader, man, it's unreal. We'll just call him JoJo going forward. But JoJo Trader and Smith, man, those are just unreal guys. You're talking about the number 1 wide receiver in the nation and the number 3 wide receiver in the nation. And with us pulling in Bolden and Lester back to back, I think our chances are pretty high, man. What do you think? You think we get one of those two?
Yeah, I've always thought that FSU had a decent shot with Trader. You pretty much figure it's going to be a FSU Miami battle with him being a Miami kid. Of course, Jeremiah, been committed to Ohio State for a long time, and the kind of narrative with him was, as long as Hartline was up there, he's probably going to stick. But I don't know, man. The more he keeps showing up, they always say follow the visits, and I think if the offense performs at the level that we think it will, and he keeps coming to campus, you never know, man. Never know. But with Trader being committed to Miami, he kind of committed out of the blue. I really think Miami, Cristobal probably put some pressure on that young man to commit because, at that time, FSU had a lot of momentum and Miami was dead in the water. And, he hadn't taken any visits and still hasn't. And I said at the time, I was like, this guy just committed out of the blue, out of nowhere, and hadn't taken any OVs or anything, so I wouldn't even really consider him a commit at this point. And of course, he did an interview. He was like, yeah, I plan to take my visits, whatever. And the Miami fans, he's not really committed and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, told you. I told you.
Yeah, it felt forced when it happened. And he's came out since, like you said, he hasn't taken a lot of his other visits. He came out and said he is going to visit multiple schools. So it's like, it makes you wonder about that one. Yeah, I agree with you. I think we get one of the two. I was thinking, before that commitment came kind of out of nowhere, like you said, I was thinking Trader would be the one and Smith would be more of a long shot. But like you said, Smith, kind of like Landon Thomas, he's showing up on campus. I think he's been on campus 8 or 9 times. And another guy that's already in the class, LaWayne McCoy, word, from the team is that they're working on keeping him. The last couple of days, we've seen reports that the staff's really making a push to keep him in the class. I believe he had a 3-way call with Lester and Bolden. Them guys recruiting him, trying to keep Tribe 24. I'd been on record a lot thinking that LaWayne would probably end up flipping before it was over, especially if, like we're talking about, if we can get Jeremiah Smith or Josiah the Trader to flip, I think, that would be it. He'd be gone. But the way they're looking at it now, I mean, they may be locking him in. He's, maybe having a change of heart, kind of seeing what's going on at some of these other places he was thinking about heading could play a factor into it. Like you said, things at Miami are pretty chaotic right now, to say the least.
I mean, that was the other thing with Miami, bro, I mean, they don't even have a quarterback. I mean, they got one, but they don't have one. If you read between the lines there.
Right.
And I'm like, you talking about, I mean, if you don't have a quarterback, after they lose, TVD this year, it's like they don't really have anybody proven. So, I always kind of looked at that one like, but yeah, with McCoy, I mean, he's a talented kid. I mean, I think the thing with him was, he hadn't been on campus since he committed. So it's like, well, that's never a good sign. But it sounds like he's showing more interest as far as coming and visiting and becoming more involved with the commits that are on the in Tribe 24. And when and this when you look at it, it's like when you got a lot of top guys committed. Guys want to play with top guys, and I think between it was UCF at one point in Miami. I mean, UCF is hell, they've almost caught Miami, so FSU is head and shoulders above both of those teams. So yeah, I think as of right now, it looks good for McCoy. So we'll see.
Hey, there's no doubt about it, man. It's a beautiful thing to see Florida State football in that top 5 line in high school recruiting where they belong. Another guy, a third guy from that Chaminade Madonna team on the defensive side of the ball is a guy named Zaquan Patterson. There have been rumblings around the timeline, around the beat, that he was going to be choosing a decision soon. Behind the scenes, rumors that he's trending Florida State's direction. That's cooled down the past couple of days. We're really hot last week. A lot of different people talking about it. But he's announced he will be deciding this coming Saturday, August the 26th. He's going to make his announcement. I don't know if it was announced via 247. I don't know if he announced that it's going to be live or anything like that, how he's going to do his promotion. But I like our chances, man. Like I said, it's kind of cooled down. I haven't heard from any sources the last couple of days with anything solid, but if we could pull him, you got a real shot to say we have the best, defensive back class in the entire nation. If you can bring in the number 3 safety to go along with the number 1 safety, and you already got the number 2 corner in the class. I mean, that's pretty unreal. There's not, unless there's some other team that has the number 1 corner and the number 2 safety, which Georgia probably does. But yeah, it's going to be up there for 1 or 2. There can't be but possibly one other team that can come close to that.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, yeah, we'll see. I mean, regardless of where he commits this weekend, it's still a long process. Either way, I look at it, and then also you still have another top guy out there in Jamari Howard, who they've been on. So I mean, either way, man, those guys they're in good shape. I kind of wrote about it not long ago. You had the class almost filled out. So we are actually well hunting, unlike Miami. You got all these top guys. When the coaches can say, "Hey, look, these are the 6 or 7 or whatever that we want, or who we need to finish off this class to have an elite class," and you got all those top guys kind of focusing their energy on those guys along with the coaches. I mean, and then you couple that with what they may do on the field or what we expect them to do on the field. Hey, you're gonna get probably the majority of those guys, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah, you're right, man. Look, it's the first time in a whole long time that we got the season as a bargaining chip. We're looking forward to getting this, Mike Norvell to put his offense on the field one more year, to see Adam Fuller's defense with a real defensive line, back there. So I agree 100%. Sitting at top 5 heading into the season, there's no telling what we can do. And even if Patterson or, you name them, somebody else does commit somewhere, or maybe there's a defensive lineman out there right now that, ends up seeing what Verse does this year and decides he wants to flip it. Like you said, there's a long, long ways to go in recruiting, but real excited about that. There's another guy that just announced his commitment. He's going to be committing tomorrow, and that's Edric Houston. There was kind of a lot of smoke around his name that we might be making a push on him, possibly get him to pop. But as far as I know, we're not in his top unless he's trying to just do a complete shock at his ceremony. I think that'll have to be a thing where they have to work for a flip later on. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a Florida State guy tomorrow, but we'll stick with it and we'll keep you guys informed and go from there. When it comes to the team, they just finished their second scrimmage Sunday night. They've got today and tomorrow off, but they released the media from Mike Norvell, Alex Atkins, John Papuchis, all spoke, and Adam Fuller, of course, both coordinators and the special teams coordinator. The confidence that Mike Norvell had in that press conference and some of the quotables he gave off, man, like, I've got a 2 deep that I'm really happy with. 8 offensive linemen that can start. I'm happy. You can split them up anyways, but 8 guys I really trust on the offensive line. So many things he said. you know, I saw some guys talking about this on another podcast. It's like Mike Norvell's, he keeps camping things pretty tight. Like, I don't think if camp was an absolute disaster, we would know about it, so you got to take the good things with a grain of salt. But the main thing is just the body language. It's like he's been pretty honest in years past about what they have to work on, this and that. It's like finally he's got all his pieces in every spot on the field locked down. There's no glaring hole here. There's no having to try to get a right guard to learn how to play tackle in 2 weeks because your right tackle went down and he was the only one you had. Mm-hmm. DJ Lundy stepping up at linebacker. We got 4 quarterbacks that can play. Brock Glenn making a push for backup, like giving Tate Rodemaker a run for his money. Conrad Hussey showing up as a true freshman, contributing with the safeties. Kevin Noles moving over with the safeties. Azaria Thomas getting healthy. All reports are Renardo Green's killing it. He's that same physical corner out there. Fentrell Cypress is, slowly but surely coming along and getting more acquainted with the defense. Is there anything that really stood out to you, or is there one, position group or anything you're really concentrating, coming out of the second scrimmage as far as the roster?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Norvell or it might have been Atkins, one of them. He said that they got 8 guys that they believe they can go to win with, and then they have 2 more guys that they believe can play at a high level. So when you got that, when you have all the production returning that we have from last year, I'm really, I mean, as far as offense and defense, I'm not really concerned with much. I feel a lot better about the secondary now from what we're hearing from the coaches and as far as, every time you turn around, you see a video of guys, playing, getting their head around, making a play on the ball, or Adam Fuller, putting something like mission takeaway and things like that. And then, the only concern really was safety. And so now that, you got Kevin Noles moving back there, and then the young guys, KJ Kirkland, Conrad Hussey, those guys stepping up at that position. Ideally, you don't want to have them play that much early in the season, but I think as we progress, midpoint and later in the season, you'll see more of those guys. So, I mean, other than, kicker, other than special teams, I mean, I really, it's all about just execution, really, man. And that was it last year. They had opportunities to be an elite unit on offense last year. It was just execution in a couple games. Or not having the horses at certain positions, like on the offensive line, whenever they're in short yardage positions to get that 2 yards or 3 yards when they needed it. Or the kicker, having to gamble knowing you didn't have a kicker, that really impacted things. And then defensively, I know a lot of people give crap to the defense, but I mean, whenever you didn't have Lovett out there, yeah, there was some concern as far as stopping the run and things of that nature. But whenever you put him back out there, and then you add Fisk and more depth there, defensive end with Verse and Peyton and then Edmond, you have way more depth or way more proven guys than you did at this time last year. You think about it this year, last year at this time, we really didn't know what Jared Verse was. We had an idea, but he hadn't proven it at that level yet. Patrick Peyton, redshirt freshman. You had Derek McClendon, he was, a good player, but he wasn't, anything that, that you threw out there and he's going to dominate. But this year, totally different story across the board, So, yeah, I really don't have that many concerns. And then you look at what the other teams have or what they're bringing back. And really, I spoke about it on one of the episodes on my podcast, but it's a two team schedule, really, and you have both of those teams early. So if you take care of business the way I think they should, then it's sky's the limit as long as you stay healthy.
Yeah, man. The difference was that defensive line last year. Fabo was hurt. You mentioned Derek McClendon. I think he played more snaps than anybody. He had like 650 snaps just because he was the one defensive end that stayed healthy all year. Verse got dinged up in that Louisville game. I believe he only had like 300 snaps. You think about it, how much hype there is behind him. I believe he had 9 sacks and like to only play 300 something snaps. That's pretty impressive. And people forget about the wide receivers. Like all 4 of those 4, we brought in 4 wide receivers last year. And it's like Johnny Wilson has just been a part of the team forever. But I mean, he just got here last year. He almost had 1,000-yard year. I believe he had 5 touchdowns. He's about to go off. You bring in Keon Coleman, but not to get distracted, to stay on the defensive line. That was it. It was depth at the defensive line because when Lovett got hurt, it was a big time drop off to that number 2 and that number 3. This year, bringing in Fisk and getting Iobama Tafase off the practice squad, I believe both those guys are better than what the second defensive tackle coming off the bench last year was. And that just makes such a huge difference. And it's such a shame we don't get Darrell Jackson, but hopefully some of the politicians can get that. And sorry to cut you off. I was just on a roll.
No, you good. Also, you talk about Verse only playing about 300 snaps. And of those 300, how many of those were like 70%? Because he wasn't fully healthy. Malcolm Ray wasn't fully healthy. You had Daniel Lyons, who we haven't even mentioned yet, who has another year on his belt, just as Tafasi does. And so, I mean, you have more experience. These guys have another year of strength and conditioning under their belt. And I mean, when you can rotate those guys and not have a drop off. But you saw it last year. Matter of fact, I think it might have been the Boston Cop. No, it was the Miami game. We were blowing them out, and they put the second, third team guys in, and Miami went right down the field. And then they put the ones back in as they got near the goal line, I think the 15 to 10-yard line, and then they kept them out of the end zone, and it was a massive difference. It was like, bro, they're running it down their throats whenever you got the backups in, but I don't think that'll be the case this year.
Yeah, there was a clear line of demarcation. You just had way too big of a drop off from the first string to the second string. And even Robert Cooper was fighting a shoulder injury all year. We were decimated by injuries at that group. And guys had to play because we just weren't that deep, and it's just a total opposite thing. Braden Fisk has kind of been, talking about camp. He's kind of been the story of camp. A guy that's 305 pounds. The big thing that I keep hearing is that he is just extremely fast off the ball. No matter who you talk to that's seen practice, if you look down the defensive line when the quarterback snaps it, he's the first head that moves every single time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of what we were missing at the defensive line. Fabian Lovett was great at that first step, and he gets his hands on guys, swim moves, jumps past. But that's not Robert Cooper's game at all. Mm-hmm. And with Fabo dinged up and Robert Cooper, especially with his shoulder hurt, it definitely wasn't his game last year. So it's just going to be such a different level of explosion coming off the snap. And like we've talked about, to have guys like Io and Farmer, who's going to be an even much better player than he was last year, and also, 100% healthy. Just going to be a fun time to watch that defensive line work. We talked about the safeties. The safeties are going to be great. There's been a lot of talk around this LSU game on this channel in particular. I'm pretty bullish. I like us by about a touchdown. Everybody knows that. My last guest had LSU by 3. Some folks think that Florida State's going to get blowed out. Some folks think FSU is going to blow them out of the water. I think we're going to see another game like last year, a back and forth game. I just think at the end of the day, LSU just has more question marks, in my opinion. More things to attack, more things for Adam Fuller to attack on defense. I think there's a better chance of us making Jaden Daniels one-dimensional than them making us one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. At the same time, they have some explosive guys like their linebacker Perkins. It's going to be a totally different offensive line than we saw last year, but at the same time, we've got a totally different defensive line too. That's what I keep telling people. Everybody's so worried about, well, that Will guy, that left tackle, he's amazing now. And it's like Jared Verse got him, his first ever collegiate start. But then I come back with, well, that was Jared Verse's first P5 start too. He's coming from University of Albany and not even in Albany, Georgia, Albany, New York. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it was his first shot at the big time too. And like we said, He only ended up with about 300 snaps last year, so he's ready to come out there and explode. I like our D line versus their offensive line as far as that matchup goes. Well, how do you see it? What do you think about them?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it last year, you're right. I mean, they did have a younger offensive line last year, but FSU's defensive line is, I mean, they were fresh in the second game technically. I mean, FSU's defensive line dominated their offensive line last year. And you look at it, and this is how I look at it. You kind of go position by position, Did their O-line get better? Yes. And as you said, did our D-line get better? Yeah. And when you do that across the board, I think FSU has, way more pros than they do. And so when you look at it, it was a close game last year, but then it really wasn't, So in one of my podcasts, I kind of went through and looked at the scoring opportunities that FSU had last year. And, you take away a missed field goal, you take away a turnover on downs right before the half, different ball game going to halftime. Then FSU goes out and scores the first 10 points of the second half. It easily could be like 27-3. And it's off to the races then. They're one-dimensional, and you pin your ears back and just go back and, kill the guy when he drops back. So I like us in that game. I haven't fully broken it down the way I want to yet. I plan to do that next year. But yeah, as far as people thinking LSU is going to blow FSU out, I don't see that at all. I think that's people just looking at probably brands and SEC and just assuming that, hey, well, they're in the SEC, they should be better, instead of looking at the rosters and what each team brings to the table and how they match up. So, yeah, I like us in that game. I'm not ready to give a prediction yet, but, I like us in that game.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm the same way. I went ahead and made a prediction because we've talked about it so much. We do a space every Wednesday, FSU Real Talk space, and we've really, talked about it. I'm ready for this thing to get here. I can't wait to play the game. But I've got more talking to LSU people here the past week or so, try to get a better understanding of their side of things. And they're really, really bullish on Jaden Daniels. They think he's the best running quarterback in the nation. I feel like that's kind of a thing where he had to run more. Like, I feel like if Jordan Travis was going to be the running quarterback thing, he could easily be the best, quote unquote, running quarterback, but he's only, he rushed for 400 yards because he's running to look to throw the ball 90% of the time, unless it calls for it. He'll take off and run like he did in that Florida game. Plenty. But I just, I don't know about their running backs. I literally don't know a single name of one of their running backs off the top of my head. I've looked it up and I can't remember. Not to say that they don't have a talented guy. I don't feel like that's their bread and butter. It's not like they have a guy that they're ready to hang their hat on and like pack their lunch pail and run it, 20, 30 times a game. It's going to come down to him being able to throw the ball over our heads. Adding Fintrell Cypress makes me feel so much better. And you can say that. We talked about the defensive line. You bring up Fintrell, adding him. It's year 4 for Mike Norvell. That's the big difference for me when I look across the board. Like, LSU has comparable talent. If you want to go through the high school recruiting rankings and all that and go through who'll be drafted one day and who will do this, at the end of the day, it's year 2 for Brian Kelly. They had to bring in, 9 guys on the secondary, like 6 transfers and 3 high school kids. They're in more of a, still filling holes and figuring out exactly what kind of team they're going to be. I just feel like Norvell has all his pieces in place. Like, knock on wood, we have luck with health, but everywhere, all 4 position groups on each side of the ball, it's just, you've got that guy and a backup. It's like Norvell said in his press conference. He's happy. He's got a 2 deep he's happy with. Like, he's ready to go win football games with. I don't see any glaring weaknesses, and that's the main thing. They seem to think Perkins is going to be able to track Jordan Travis down and stop him from running around. Like, to quote a guy in a space the other day, that run around shit ain't happening this year. And I don't see.
Hey, it didn't
I
have to
don't see
happen
that's
last
what
year.
he does. So how do you think? What do you feel about that? Do you think Perkins is going to really be able to spy him and limit him that much, or do you think pretty much it's going to be Jordan Travis out there?
Yeah, I hope they do spy him, because then he's not rushing the passer. And that takes one different way that you can do other things with. So I mean, Jordan didn't have to run last year. That's the thing. A lot of people look at it, and we were FSU fans were guilty of that also. It's kind of like he's a running quarterback. He can make a few throws here and there, but that game last year really opened my eyes as far as the progression of him as a quarterback. I mean, there were so many third and 6, 37s, 39s that he converted with his arm that, I started looking at him like, whoa, that's different. That's different. If he can play at this level, the whole year, bro, like it's gonna be a problem. So yeah, I'm not really worried about Perkins. It's more so just can we run the ball? Can we run the ball with our backs and not have to have Travis to run the ball to kind of soften the defense, so to speak? If we can run the ball, we can beat anybody. Then it just becomes about converting, staying in front of the chains, not going predictable pass downs and things like that. Winning 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. And if you do those things, I mean, usually when Mike Norvell's offense stays ahead of the chains, they're incredibly hard to stop. I mean, because like you said, it's all about just, finding the weaknesses of the defense and exploiting them, putting guys in those 50-50 matchups. And the thing is, like you said, FSU now has guys that they can go win a 50-50 ball. Whether it's Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, or Jaheim Bell, who Biscuit, whoever you put in the slot, they're gonna be tough to stop. If they don't beat themselves, that's the biggest thing. A few times last year they turned the ball over, or like I said, they just couldn't win. They just couldn't win in the trenches in certain aspects against certain teams. But if they can do those things this year, the sky's the limit for this offense for sure.
There's no doubt that middle of the season, especially, it really hurt. But we've got the guys this year, and especially it's the first game of the year. So if anybody's going to see the full complement of our weapons, it's going to be LSU in this first game. And you brought up tight end. That's probably the number one thing that I'm anxious to see from Norvell, because he's a guy that likes to use 2 tight ends a lot, and we just haven't had the personnel to do it. What's he going to scheme up with Jaheim Bell this year? He's got 6'7" Kyle Morlock. You mentioned it, Biscuit. Biscuit is just like come out of nowhere. He's just really on an upward track. He's been making, mossing guys in camp. He really started to come on last year as more than just a blocker, catching passes and everything. I'm super excited to see what they do with those tight ends, because they can send them out. They can max protect, like never before. It's going to be a different offense in that aspect. And also with the running backs, you kind of brought it up. Losing Trayshawn Ward was you lost him for the reason you want to, because you've got studs coming up behind him. But there's aspects of Ward's game that Benson just doesn't have in his game.
Mm-hmm.
Like Benson's more of that outside zone runner. Trayshawn was better at the trap and a lot of making things happen with early penetration, hitting holes and stuff like that in the A gap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious to see who picks up that slack, whether Benson is kind of, just taken to a next level and is more of a more well-rounded back, or is it Rodney Hill, or is it Keziah Holmes? Which one of those 2 guys kind of steps up? Not to talk over Toafili. I want to be clear. I love Lawrence Toafili, and I feel like he has a role on this team. He's going to be the 3rd down running back. He's going to be, if they've got 2 backs in the backfield, he's going to be the guy on the wheel route. I'm sure he'll probably have 1,000 all-purpose yards by the time the year's over with. But as far as that guy, like I said, to run those trap plays and really run those, runs up the gut, I'm really curious. Who do you think really kind of steps up? Do you think Rodney Hill's ready, or do you think Keziah Holmes, being a couple years older and with the experience at Penn State, comes out and really takes that over?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think probably Hill has the the skill set that mostly resembles what Trayshawn Ward brought to the table. I am curious to see how much they use him early in the season. Like you said, he played in 4 games last year, but he still didn't have a ton of experience, and you're going to have some big games here early on. So I'm curious to see just how much they lean on Trey Benson, or if they just kind of use Toa Philly as an extension of the run game, in the passing game out of the backfield. But yeah, Holmes is a guy I was high on whenever, we were recruiting him under the old staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was high on him then. And a lot of people don't realize this, but coming out of high school, Holmes was faster than Benson. He was like a 10-7 guy out of high school. And I think
I remember he was super fast when he went to Penn State. He was what, class of 19?
Yes, yeah, I think so. And I think Benson was like 10-9 in the 100, but obviously, both of those guys have dealt with injuries, so that can affect different things. But Holmes is a guy that could really, really spell Benson at times. And I think the biggest thing I'm looking forward to, though, is how Benson was. There was times last year, even in the bowl game, where he kind of was timid and just kind of wasn't sure of himself. And so I'm wondering, he's been in the system for a year now. He should know the offense better. He should have more confidence in his legs and knee and whatnot. And I'm just curious to see if he can just be that guy. He was that guy for like 6 or 7 games, but then he had a couple games where he kind of just disappeared a little bit. And so that's really what I'm looking for. I think between Holmes and Toa Philly and Hill, they'll figure it out, because Mike has always had a running game. It don't matter who you have back there. Think back to 2020. They had LaDainian Webb back there, and he was busting dudes up. And they got him out of a JUCO somewhere. And he came out of nowhere, and he was doing his thing. So I really don't worry about running back too much. I just think they just have a really good feel for how to scheme things and block it up with angles. And, it doesn't really matter who they have back there. They'll have some production. But it would be nice to see he'll take that next step, especially when we consider Benson, he'll be gone after this year more than likely. And so you're kind of looking at who's going to be the guy in the future that can step up. So that'll definitely be good to see early on.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Hill definitely showed flashes last year of like, okay, you could see this guy being that dude. And like you said, Keziah Holmes, the same thing. If he can, I'll say this: if Keziah Holmes is back to the form that he had as a true freshman headed into his sophomore year before he got hurt and everything coming out of high school, I would say that he could really be the Trey Benson of this year, and possibly, you'll have the people, with backup syndrome saying, we want Keziah, over Benson. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying he's got the potential. And if he can get back to that form, he's a legit, Power 5 running back. So that would be great. And I think Rodney Hill, I think the world of him. But like you said, is it too soon? Is he really ready to take up that big of a role, coming straight into an LSU and a Clemson in week 4? Maybe not, but we'll see. I just can't wait, because like you said, Mike Norvell, he's kind of known for getting these running backs and exploiting exactly what they do best, whatever that may be. And you see it with the guys he had at Memphis that all went to the NFL and are succeeding today.
For sure.
We touched on it a little bit, but adding Keon Coleman with Johnny Wilson out on the outside this year. We always had Johnny, and then we had the steady Ontario Wilson. To have 2 legitimate number 1s on each side, a 1A and a 1B, it's going to be so hard for teams to double. We've already talked about the tight ends inside. I want to just, think about a formation. You got a formation that's got 6'7" Johnny Wilson on the outside, and you come in at Jaheim Bell. Then you go out on the other side, and you got Keon Coleman out there. You got Trey Benson in the backfield. You can't double anybody. You can't really, if you focus on the run, he's going to throw it over your head. if you try to, put two safeties back, we're just going to hand it to Benson and run it up the middle. We're so balanced. It's why I gotta be real careful with myself and act like this thing ain't going to be a blowout. But we have this conversation, and I'm looking for a spot that LSU could potentially, really hammer us at. And I guess it just all comes down to the line of scrimmage. If these guys that we got are who we think we are, or who we think they are, we're gonna win this thing going away, man. It's just I just can't wait for it to get here. September 3rd, a little bit less than 2 weeks away. And you see, we'll let you save your prediction. You said you're gonna make your prediction on your podcast.
Yeah, I'll probably do it on there, or usually I'll do like a game by game kind of win shares article. Just give a percentage of who, what percentage I think they have to win this game or whatnot. So look out for that pretty soon. But one thing I want to touch on too, we're talking about the size. One thing that's going to be impactful for having that size at wideout is the running game. And think about it, they're going to be Debo and these guys out there in the secondary. So I wouldn't be surprised to see. I'm not in this LSU game in particular. I'm just talking in general. Just tons of just long runs. Once guys break into the second level of defense, and you got your huge wide receivers, and you got Biscuit, and you got Bell, Morlock. These guys are huge. You just got them clearing space out there. I mean, that's where they're really going to be underrated as far as their ability to block it up at the second level, and hopefully change the numbers on the scoreboard instead of having to go 6, 7, 8 play drives. Hey, give me 3 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. I'll take that all day long, So, yeah, man, it's you're right. It's hard to find the weaknesses. And I kind of was that way last year, but I hadn't seen it. Last year it's like, hey, coming off 5-7, I feel like we have the talent to beat LSU, especially with them coming in, new staff, all this good stuff. And but we just hadn't really seen it at that level. And I was like, if we execute, yeah, we can win the game, and I know we have the talent this year. It just comes down to execution. We can look at it all day long, but that's why we play the games. Going back to NC State last year, we should have blew them out, but we didn't. So I hate to bring up a negative, but it's you kind of have to balance it out too, and understand that that's why you play the games, and that's where it takes care of itself. But yeah, I feel really good about where we are and the trajectory of the program. I know a lot of, especially Miami fans, are talking about, this is going to be, after this year, they're going to go back to sucking and all this. I'm like,
you wish,
bro, you have no idea what's coming. They're set up for success multiple years down the road with the way they've been recruiting at specific positions. Mike knows that you got to have a quarterback, and that's what he's been. Got Glenn in, Duffy, Glenn, Cromanhope, and that's really was the difference maker in how Clemson passed FSU, excuse me, back when Jimbo was there. He got the top quarterback every time. Whether it was when Todd Boyd was left, then you had Deshaun Watson.
They're on a hell of a run, and it's still going to this day. If Klubnik can be that guy, it's unreal.
So Dabo was smart enough to know, I got to have a quarterback. They weren't talented. They weren't talented than a lot of those teams that they beat, but they had a difference maker quarterback. And he would run those guys in the dirt, 20, 25 times a game. And whatever it takes to win. So, but yeah, I feel good about the future of FSU with the way everything's set up. So for sure.
Yeah, for sure, man. Looking past LSU, like you said, bringing up that kind of NC State game, I think that's one thing you can see this team, and I'm pretty positive and feel pretty great that thankfully they dropped the division. So now the top 6 teams in the ACC are all in one division. So we don't even play NC State or Louisville this year. But for Wake Forest, for instance, and even Pitt and Duke, they'll give us trouble. But I just feel like LSU and Clemson, yeah, we can have these conversations all day, and it's going to be a slugfest and coin flip game. But the other 10 teams on our schedule, save Florida, because they will line up. I still like us, but they'll be, on a physical level, they'll be a lot closer. But I guess those other 9 teams, those other 8 ACC games, and the 2 out of conference games, we should be able to just physical those guys. Like you said, those big wide receivers out on the outside, when we want to run the ball, there should be pancake blocks going on, and we shouldn't have, even though, like I said, NC State isn't on the schedule, we shouldn't be in a fourth quarter game against Wake Forest this year. We should handle them.
Yeah.
If we are, something has went wrong, and injury luck didn't go our way. That's one thing that it doesn't matter who you are, Alabama, Georgia, anybody. Injury luck has to go your way, and it has to, if you get you get a rash of injuries at the wrong spot, it doesn't matter who you are. It's gonna affect your season. So I think we're primed and is in a good position to make that healthy run as we have since 2014, if you ask me.
Oh yeah. That and turnovers. Turnovers can be an equalizer for sure whenever there's a difference in talent level. And that's something that Duke did really well last year. Now it's it's not sustainable to have the turnover look that they had. I mean, I think they were something like plus 26. They recovered something like 12 or 14 fumbles. They had like 9 or 10, 11 interceptions. It was something crazy.
They'll be our third toughest ACC game. Riley Leonard's the beast.
But then they only beat 2 teams with a winning record last year. I don't think they have the depth to stack up. I mean, you'll find out first game when they play Clemson. That'll tell you all you need to know about.
Yeah, you'll know what you need to know right there.
And then not only that, we play them a little later in the year. They'll be more banged up. That depth, just like with us last year. If you don't have the depth, I mean, it'll by the time you get to midway point of the year, you saw it with Syracuse last year. They played a murderer's row before they got to us. And I said it all on the timeline. They started out hot. I said, by the time they get to us, bro, I'm telling you. And before you know it, God dropped. This guy's hurt. He's not available. And we saw how that game went. It wasn't even a game. And that's the difference between, FSU and these teams on the schedule this year, aside from the, LSU and Clemson's. It's just you just have better depth and better talent overall, just like it used to be.
Yeah, no doubt. When you look at, and that's another thing about last year, like those 3 games we lost, we caught all 3 of those teams, like fully healthy, like playing their best ball of the year. It was like, we couldn't have caught them at the worst time, and they caught us at the perfect time. That was rough. To see us to come out four games in a row like that and then drop those 3. I'm expecting a lot more of the latter half of the season this year.
Yeah, I'll say aside from NC State, because they played their whole second half with, it should have been me out there.
Yeah, that NC State of all those games, that's one that we should have won. Like, regardless of what was going on with us, it was this thing where it was like, I don't know if Jordan Travis had an injury, but if you remember, he wasn't running that night. Like he would run like at the last second, but it was like multiple third downs in that fourth quarter where it was like, if you just run, get that first down, we'd have been good. And we didn't have a kicker. You brought that up earlier. People forget, like I forget to, we've done so much talking and we're so far removed from last year. Not having a kicker in the middle part of that season absolutely killed us. We had to go for it so many times on their 30 that it was like, man, if we had a kicker, I mean, I believe one game I counted like 9 or 12 points we lost because it might have been the NC State game. Like, because I believe if we would have kicked field goals, we would have been up by like 9 points or something that NC State game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. That and our receivers didn't do us any favors either. There was like 4 or 5 massive drops in the NC State game, and that's kind of what I keep going back to. I know a lot of people are talking about it's going to be on the defense and how well that the team does this year, but I don't agree with that at all. It's going to be on the offense. It's all, you got to score points to win the game. And if the offense scores the way we think it will, the defense will be good enough to get enough stops to win the game. That's it. If they go out there and execute, they're efficient. Score in the red zone whenever they get down there. They had 10 opportunities last year when they were in the red zone, didn't score at all. And like you said, it was a combination of didn't have a kicker, or turn the ball over, or they didn't have the horses on the O-line to convert a 4th and 2 like we saw against Clemson. You get down there in the 2-yard
Right,
line.
man. We keep
2-yard line. 2-yard line. It's first and goal on a 2-yard line, and we don't score against Clemson. Like that's ridiculous, So those are the little things, though. Those things like that are going to be the difference in whether you win those big games or not, especially when you're playing against elite competition. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in this first game against LSU.
Yeah, you brought that up earlier. I meant to speak on it, but short yardage, that's another one of those things that we just could not get done. We could do everything, but then we'd have to get cute on the goal line, and it turns into a fumble. The only reason LSU is in that game to start with. Really hoping the addition of guys like Byers, the play of Dimitri Emmanuel towards the end of the year, Maurice Smith being healthy, I 100% thought he was going to get passed up. He told me, I talked to him at the spring game, and he just he shook it off. He was like, "Them dudes ain't got a freaking shot. I'm winning this thing." And sure enough, he's held true to his word, and really surprised. He's owned it. So I'm thinking we're going to see a totally different Maurice Smith this year. I think we're going to see more of a push out of him. I can't remember. I'm not sure if it was a hip he was fighting, but he was fighting something last year. For pretty much the whole year.
Oh, yeah, we almost lost him before the season even started. It was like,
right,
man.
Losing Bless Harris in that week 0 game, that should be another big thing to help us in short yardage. I'm sure they'll bring in Keandre Jones for some extra O-line sets.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people forget that too. We didn't play at LSU with Bless Harris last year, so. Another guy was going to be Roddick, and I don't know if Norvell meant to do this. If you listen to the press conference the other day, he kind of said that Maurice Smith and Casey Roddick only played about 20 snaps, and after that they pulled him. So I was like, we pretty much know Maurice is going to be the starter at center. So I was wondering, well, is that kind of foreshadowing of Roddick playing guard?
Right.
And I don't know if he meant to do that or not, but I was kind of paying attention. I was like, wait, so you pulled? We know Maurice is going to start. So you pulled Roddick along with him at only 20 snaps, and that's a big boy. That's a big boy guard. So you're right. If they get those big guys in there on the interior, they should be able to get a push this year, much more than last year.
It's only 5 spots, man. It's crazy to see how far we've come. Is Robert Scott going to get pushed out of the lineup? It can't happen, can it? He was the best lineman for 2 years, and then last year stalwart. It's where do you put everybody? Dimitri Emmanuel was playing probably the best offensive line of anybody on the team at the end of last year. So you got to put him in a guard. If you put Roddick at a guard and you got Maurice Smith at center, Bless Harris is winning the tackle. I mean, that leaves you're picking between Byers and Scott for a spot on the line. It's pretty unreal.
Well, I think Norvell was making it a point. He said it numerous times over the last couple of weeks. There are going to be guys that are starters. The worst starters last year that might not be starting this year. I mean, he's not making any bones about it. He's putting it out there. Guys, I'm telling you, you gotta. Hey, if you're trying to start, you got to do something. But I think too, there'll be enough games on the schedule where FSU will be rolling people, and those guys they'll get plenty of snaps this year. So I think it'll all work itself out.
No doubt, man. Well. We're right at about 50 minutes. I think my light's about to die, if I'm being honest with you, man. But I appreciate you coming on, breaking down the game with you. Can't wait for this kickoff to get here, man. Hope to speak with you again maybe during the season. Maybe talk about a win over LSU, maybe one over Clemson. You got anything in particular? I know you got your podcast you just launched. Anything you want to promote before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, man. Well, look, I appreciate you having me on, George. It's been a blast. I mean, I could be in here talking all night, but yeah, guys, you can find me, Built for Playmakers, on the YouTube channel. You just search Built for Playmakers. I'm on there. Also on chopchat.com. We produce a lot of original content We break down games. We talk recruiting. We talk a lot of the ins and outs of an athlete that's playing in college. I played college baseball, so I can kind of give that perspective that some guys on the beat can't. So yeah, it's just a well-rounded site. We talk about a lot of different things. Find me on Twitter. Well, is it Tweet X, whatever you want to call it now? I'm on there all the time. I'm on there all the time, and talking smack. Whatever, just having a good time. So again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you, George, for having me, and look forward to doing it again for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't get used to that X. I'll never get used to it. It's so hard. X. But yeah, catch us on X Wednesday on the FSU Real Talk Spaces. Me, Chris Frazier, and Seymour Stacks. And also 6 p.m. Eastern, catch us on the me, Chris, and James on the FSU Voice of College Football weekly live stream. Thanks again to Kelvin. We'll see y'all for episode 4.
Go Noles.